because if not, then we're out of luck now.
Is there a way to track?
It says it's live, so
I was about to say I'm just gonna open YouTube and see what happens.
I'm gonna go ahead and mark us live on YouTube as well, or it'll do it automatically in 1 minute. But so hi.
There we go. Oh, there's an ad first.
Yeah, it's got a monetization. And we're live.
Okay, I skipped the ad. Here we go.
Yay! You skipped the ad like a lot of people do.
It is live. I can see all of us.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Who is live, as well as us.
There's a little bit of a lag, which is fun.
Yeah, there's always lag from the live meeting until the live Zooming. So don't watch the live Zooming while live meeting, I guess. If you want to watch the chat, though, hello, everyone in the chat. I'm Trace. I'm drinking a Truly today. It's Truly time. That's not brand placement. That's really just what I had in the fridge.
Not sponsored.
And this is my channel. Welcome. Hello. This is SciComm Happy Hour. Happy Friday. It's April 3rd. Hello.
Cheers.
So yeah, I'm Trace. You can find me all across the internets, but this is my channel, so I'll talk more later. Sarafina, tell everyone who you are.
Hi, I'm Sarafina. I am a grad student in astrophysics at UC Berkeley. I do supernova and cosmology, and I talk about both a lot on Twitter and Instagram.
Cool.
At Starstricken SF.
Boom.
Yeah.
Jordan, who are you?
Hey, I'm Jordan. I'm also a grad student. I'm at Harvard and MIT, and I study medical engineering. I'm interested in non-invasive brain stimulation for pain to replicate anesthesia. And I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about how we interact with like AI and algorithms and new technology. So you can find me at my name on pretty much every social media platform.
And number 4, Bobak, how are you, buddy?
Hey, good to see you. I'm good. I guess I was just talking about myself if people don't know me. I'm an engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, working on robotic exploration of our solar system.
That's cool. I think.
It's a fun job.
Yeah. I think that's cool too.
It's awesome. It's a dream.
So this is SciComm Happy Hour. We, a few weeks ago, started staying inside a lot more, and so this is more for the audience, but also for you guys, because none of you have been on before. Not that there have been many to have been on yet, but we were kind of all trapped in our houses and thinking, what can we do to kind of, one, have a little mental health for ourselves, right? Get together and chit chat. And Bobak and Kishore and I started getting together and wanted to kind of have a little video chat time and talk about stuff that we get excited about, which is generally nerdy, sciencey stuff. And we thought maybe other people might want to do that too. So we decided to stream it live. And since it's Friday, we figured why not do it with a little bit of alcoholic beverages or non-alcoholic beverages, if that's your thing. You know, no judgment either way. Just enjoy. So each week, I think we just kind of shoot the shit.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Has it been a good week? Been okay?
Who goes
Been out
first?
of wine finally.
Yeah, Bobak, how you feeling?
I'm good. I mean, I'm good. I had a good week. I got promoted at work, so it was a big
What?
deal. First, thank you.
Amazing.
Thank
Snaps
you.
from Bobak.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Wow.
So it was an exciting week. I mean, with the caveat that the bar is generally lower nowadays for what's good news, but that was good news.
Were those glasses part of the promotion, or are those just
Yes.
like that? Wow. Yeah.
No, these are, you know, I wear these a lot more than I'm at home. Like, I'm real lazy to put on contacts, and I don't go outside, so I don't feel like I need more sunglasses. So I'm just like, wear glasses more. They really just remind me of my grandparents. So like, giant, oversized glasses.
Hell
make me
yeah.
happy.
I love it.
This is the first time I put on makeup today in like a month, and I was like, I don't even know how to do this anymore. But
It's not important anymore. You don't
nah.
have to do that.
No.
Nah.
Same, but only because I was filming today, not for this.
Mm. Yeah,
I
I would have been
agree.
surprised if you put makeup on for this. That's not what this is for.
I
Super
made
lazy.
seltzer
Okay.
in a soda stream and then added vodka for this.
Nice.
That's
good.
great.
I've been
good.
wanting a soda stream on this like journey now because I cannot get enough carbonated water. I'm like, where if I could just have it at home all the time.
It was the last thing I got before like self-isolation kicked in, and it wasn't even an intentional thing, but I'm so happy that I got it off of someone else on Facebook Marketplace for like 30
Oh,
bucks.
smart.
Wow, used.
Mhm.
I
Nice.
ordered in bulk directly from Spindrift. I was like, I need my
Oh, smart.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm prepared.
I was
I
gonna
also
say
just got one right before self-isolation kicked in, and it has been wonderful. I think carbonated water.
I feel like I'm all left out here. I need to get more carbonation in my life.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, but this is the makeup thing. I don't know, but like I downloaded that SnapCam app. It's like a Snapchat has like, you know, basically it's their AR tool, but can also like filter your real-time camera stream. And it is great because I'll just show up to meetings like with just complete Snapchat filters on and be like, don't worry, I'm feeling good. I don't care how I look today.
Good.
It looks.
I don't know what this is, but I will get it.
Yeah, highly recommend that if you're feeling like you just don't really want to put a lot of effort in, just have all your camera stuff filtered.
That's smart. I made the mistake of, I did a workout right outside my apartment and forgot I had a Zoom call right when my workout ended. And so I ran inside and was like dripping sweat trying to talk to like a professor in my department. And I was like, I'm so sorry. But anyway, gotta get my sunshine. So
Really quick, sidebar, hello in the chat. Nicholas Van, I'm gonna pronounce your last name wrong, sorry, Nicholas. Nicholas Van Almelo donated $10 because, I don't know, Bobak and I were talking about making these also useful in some way because, you know, it's nice to chat and stuff, but why not if we're all gonna get together, talk about something that can be, put some good in the world. And so I added Feeding America to this.
that's
chat.
awesome.
Yay.
So you can donate to Feeding America. There were 40 million people in America who were hungry and didn't have food security before this all started. So it's not going to get better during this. And so Feeding America, 98% of their donations go to feeding people around the country. So I figured we can all agree that people like to eat, and if they can't, that's not great. So somebody donated $10, Nicholas. Thank you.
That's awesome.
That's
Thank
really
you,
cool.
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
That's great.
Yeah, super cool.
Trace, can I get you to stand up and so I can see the full shirt, because that looks your style. Like last week we saw you guys missed out an amazing suit. Hopefully you can like watch the suit from last week, but
Oh yeah,
that is great.
Yeah,
that is good.
I can show you. It's just hanging over here.
Oh yeah, show us this. I mean, that just really made my day last time. So.
So I'm getting married. Well, I was going to be getting married in about 3 weeks, but we postponed it. And my wedding suit came in. You can't really tell with this light, but it's teal. It's like a teal.
It looks
green.
good. Yeah.
That's teal.
But-
It looks navy.
Oh man,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
god.
very into that.
And it has a vest.
It makes me so happy.
And the vest has the lining
Yeah.
too. So
Yes.
full custom made suit.
It really brings me joy.
My future wedding, whenever that happens, I'm gonna make my future husband do the same exact thing.
So
One
yeah,
of those
it
dresses
was,
where you like spin and then it reveals the other pattern.
yeah, let's hope
Yeah.
so. Maybe someday when we get to a dance floor, I'll get that.
How are
but-
you dealing with that? You mind if I ask? Like,
Oh,
I mean,
no,
because I have a
that's
couple friends who also.
That's why
in the
we're all
same boat.
here. Is to kind of commiserate. It's fine, you know. It sucks to have to postpone an event that you've been planning for a year. 5 weeks before it was supposed to happen. We had to email all our guests, and you know, people are really accommodating right now. I think in general, people are accommodating, especially for stuff like this. But you know, it's rough for everybody. We are in contact with all our vendors. The wedding is in Brazil, so they're also going through a lot of issues with coronavirus right now, and they close their borders essentially to us anyway. So even if we wanted to move forward, which we would not be that irresponsible, we wouldn't have been able to necessarily. So we are in talks with a hotel that we're working with, and they're normally don't do weddings in the fall, and they're going to let us do it in the fall, and we'll hopefully be able to get down there sometime later this year. But at the moment,
Sorry
it's
that's
more just,
happening.
yeah, thanks. It's just, dealing with all of the logistics. And we had a board in our apartment, and that was the worst part. Was the board was like 9 weeks, 8 weeks, 7 weeks,
Oh, yeah.
and now it's like
Oh,
28 weeks or something.
That sucks.
So
If it makes you
That
feel better,
sucks.
Trace, I've had a delay in my life that was worse, I think, which is we were initially supposed to launch Curiosity in 2009, and we had to slip the full 2 years because of that. Right? You're all timed on the Earth-Mars orbits. And so if you can't make it for that, you have to just 26 months later is the next possibility. So I do sympathize. I mean, I didn't have to, luckily somebody else is taking care of all the re-coordination. We just have to keep doing our jobs, but yeah, I can get
it's
you when
because of
you're
COVID that you
expecting
guys
things in
can't
life.
launch.
oh
Sorry?
no, this was the Curiosity.
Yeah, this is
launch, right?
2009 when we were
Oh, I
initially going to
see.
launch the
I see.
rover. We launched in 2011 instead. The current rover is still on track. They're still working hard at JPL and in Florida to make it come together for this summer. But yeah, that's also one of the reasons why so many of us are home, is to make sure the lab is as safe a space as possible for those who have to be there. So that they can.
How
still
many
make it.
people are still able to go into the lab?
I don't know what the number is now. I know that when we initially paired back, the very first round of pairbacks, we were about 1/5 of what we normally are. So we're about 6,000 people, and we were a little over 1,000. And now it's even smaller. It's on the order of hundreds.
Yeah.
And there's, of course, there's a base level of security and the fire department and all those things that have to be there no matter what. But
Right.
yeah, it's wild to. I've seen a couple pictures of friends who are there, and it's just it's a ghost town. It looks so strange to me. It's it's a small city basically, and without people, it's just real desolate.
Yeah.
When did you start working? Sorry, I'm gonna keep asking
No,
space
please,
questions
keep
if somebody doesn't
Go
stop
for
me.
it.
So, when did you start working from home? Because I know NASA started working from home way earlier than some other people.
Yeah, we were
in academia.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we
exactly.
started on the 17th or 18th of March.
Okay.
For us, yeah, we had a telecon that we thought we could only do with us in the room, because our partners in India were all still in the same room together. We're we gotta be able to do this. And then day 2 or 3 of that, it was when they were like, hey, so unless you really absolutely have to be there,
Yeah.
please reevaluate the situation.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we went through 2 rounds, essentially the first round again, with a lot of people, and then just almost just the smallest number possible at the second round. So I haven't been
Launch
back. It's
is
very weird.
still launch hasn't been delayed.
No, still July of this year. So
Wow.
although all of our plans
awesome.
to fly out there for it are now everybody's well, do I hold my
Sure.
Airbnb? Do we do these because it's supposed to be a fun event, right? For all the people who are especially working surface mission, you get to go out there, see the rocket, it's it's part of the joy.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
We'll
I am hoping to go. So
yeah, same.
Yeah.
I want to go.
Join you can.
Yeah,
it's
come
so
on.
easy.
Apply. Easy.
The nice thing about Florida is you can see from everywhere. It's a really good. You don't need any. People always think, oh, do I need to get on a base? No, you just go onto a beach.
Yep.
And you're
Really?
always within a couple miles. Oh yeah, it's very.
Florida
easy to
is
see
so
them.
flat.
Wow.
You can just stand. You can. I mean, on a clear day, you can probably see the launches from a high place in Disney. It's.
Oh sure.
It's
Yeah.
80 miles away. It's not.
So
far
you're
enough
telling me I can go to Harry Potter World and also see a rocket
Oh,
launch at the same
To
time?
be clear, that was our plan.
Oh my
Because you can't assume you're going to launch on day 1. So you go there. You're I'm going to plan to be there for 4 or 5 days because biggest odds are you launch on day 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And then you're oh, I've got 3 extra days. Might as well go to Harry Potter Land.
Yep. I drove from DC to Titusville for the final shuttle launch, STS-135. So we drove down on a Wednesday. We were both there.
Yeah.
We didn't know each other yet.
No.
So yeah, went down and then it launched surprisingly. And then we drove back across the state to go to Disney World for the day. Then drove back after Epcot closed and got back to DC at I don't know, noon. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of driving.
It was my awake record, 39 hours. It was pretty good.
Trace, that doesn't sound healthy.
Oh, I mean, it was
What? 39
Mm-mm.
hours?
It was a lot. It was a lot of hours awake.
Oh God, I can barely like make it through a night observing. Really, like I can barely make it through. I cannot imagine staying up late at night. That's insane.
I had a lot of Dr. Pepper and Skittles,
Oh,
like a lot.
That sugar caffeine mix.
Yeah, just keeping
Yeah.
it going. It was a lot.
I hate everything about how that sounds.
I've been wondering, like, if it comes to it again, like on this next on the next missions, how I will deal with the like third shift or the like, you know, oh, anomaly happens, power through for, you know, whatever 20 hours to do it. Like I know what it was. I know the baseline as of 2013, right? The last time I was forced to kind of like, all right, we got to make this work. It's going to be like 10 years later. I'm like, how will I handle this now that I'm 10 years older and trying to figure out like, can I power through still?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Is what it is. Aging.
Yeah.
So I wanted to.
Oh man, good thing we didn't do face count watch, Trace. That was a good one.
Yeah, shoot. That was a really bad face touch. We've been keeping track. I'll try and keep track of face touches. So that's one for me. Damn it.
Oh, I
only had one too. I'm gonna
my
keep touching my
face as you said
glasses.
that.
Yeah.
We're gonna start the count now.
I've been like leaning on my hand for half of
Yeah,
this.
no,
That doesn't count.
in my
We're talking more
home,
like,
I'm like all bets are off.
So I guess everybody kind of knows who we are a little bit now, but I want to jump in. Everybody kind of brought a cool thing that they've been thinking about this week or like that they want to talk about. So why don't we start with Jordan and then kind of work our way around. Everybody can take a few minutes and talk about this cool thing and why they think it's cool. So Jordan, you mentioned that in our emails before that the unexpected ways that AI impacts our lives. And I was like, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I guess I hadn't had this particular thought in my head at the time, but one area of like AI and algorithms that's like really interesting to me right now is natural adversarial images, which sounds super complicated, but it's actually like fairly simple. So an adversarial image is an image that's designed to like fool an AI algorithm. So you want to have an image that, you know, mostly looks like, for example, a panda, because that's the paper that everyone always references, but you add some noise to the panda and suddenly it's classified as something like completely different. And it turns out there's a bunch of stuff in nature that also does this, like things that just naturally exist in the world that for whatever reason, these networks have so much trouble identifying correctly. And I just think that that's a really interesting concept because it also impacts, like, as you start getting into not necessarily facial recognition, but like how computer vision is incorporated into our lives with object recognition systems, things like autonomous cars. Like, you have to find those things and kind of see how the one-off chance that you might run into them impacts the way that your system actually works. And you wouldn't encounter them often, so like you don't even have, you know, enough information to be able to fix it in your model. So it's just super unpredictable and just really interesting to me, and I'd love to learn more about like what characteristics of these naturally occurring things make them so difficult for a model to understand. And I think
Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, sure.
So I know it's a variety of characteristics that make it difficult for the model to understand. Is it that there's some like potentially a commonality between those characteristics that's like a second degree thing where they all have that thing and that's why they're hard to understand? Or is that unknown and it's kind of like it could be a first degree, it could be a second degree, or it could be some relation between all of them? I just don't know.
Yeah, so it depends a little bit on, I guess, the model itself. So the paper that I'm thinking of looked at like a subset of fairly large object recognition models. And so in that case, I would think that there's something, not necessarily a first order thing, but something in like your latent space that they have in common that you could pinpoint, but I don't know what that is, and that also may or may not be true. So yeah, if you're looking at like you know, models that have been trained on data sets that don't necessarily represent the real world, then there are probably more common things that you could pinpoint that might be like first order things where it's just not seeing X thing or it's valuing Y thing over X thing in an image when that's not really true in real life. It did, however, remind me of the whole thing where, what was it? The white and gold versus black and blue dress and how different people saw it differently. And like the visual system has been modeled as a neural network like a ton, especially by people at MIT. So I don't necessarily know that that comparison is like neural network wise true. But it's interesting to me because it's like, well, humans also do this. Like we see things and think that they're one thing and they're actually something else. And like, why does that happen to us? And does that tell us anything about why it happens to these networks or vice versa?
Isn't it the thing that I keep thinking about it that I kind of want to, is it similar to how in nature a fish might evolve? Well, like an orca evolves this giant white patch so it looks like it has a bigger eyeball than it does, right? I don't actually know if that's why the orca has that patch there, but I always picture it being an eyeball. And I know there are animals that evolve colorful patterns and things. So like moths, like, oh, this looks like eyes. So you think it's looking at you, so you don't attack it. It's almost like when you said adversarial, I thought of it as like adaptive. Is that something that when you say nature has this, or are we saying nature has this accidentally?
I don't know that, like, let's see, let me see if I can actually just bring up some pictures. Yeah, so I don't know that there's like, here's my screen.
Oh, cool. This is cool.
Examples. So like dragonfly manhole cover, like I don't think a dragonfly is trying to look like a manhole cover for any like evolutionary adaptive reason. So that's kind of why it's more interesting to me, because it's the stuff where it's like, why does, like, you could see painting in goldfish here kind of because of the patterning. But there's other stuff where it's like, well, why does this look like a washing machine? Is it the great pattern? Or why does this look like a Jeep? Stuff like that.
Well, sorry, another question. Is there something to be said about we make things based on things we've seen before? And so like the design for a manhole cover is based on potentially some subconscious understanding of what various designs are. And one of them could be a dragonfly.
It could be.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Like we might be subconsciously designing our manhole covers after dragonflies. I don't know. I don't think it's that in that particular case, but like, yeah, that's why it's so interesting to me. It's like, why does it fail on these things specifically? And what is it about these things that confuse our models so much?
I think it's fascinating. Just like that bird feeder definitely looks kind of like a Jeep. Like when you said that, I'm like, oh, those circles there, and then there's a dark stripe in the middle, and like Jeep's own logos and kind of as marks have those like kind of same icon. I don't know. I think that's fascinating. I remember talking to a guy. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I'd also be very curious to like do a survey that's like, without knowing what the network is labeling this as, what do you think this looks like?
Right.
Because like, do you think it looks like a Jeep because you saw that it said it looked like a Jeep, or because you actually think it looks like a Jeep?
I was prompted to think that to say like, oh, you think that's a Jeep. And then I said, why do you think that's a Jeep? Maybe it's these reasons, but it's like, totally. I would never have put Jeep on my own. Definitely not. I did talk to a guy who was doing AI with Google Photos, which was fascinating because he said, you know, there are certain things that people don't think about that AI has to figure out. So I'll give an example that he gave. So if you have a photo, and in that photo is a cake and people, and they're all in a room together, is it a wedding or a birthday, and how do you know?
Yep.
And it's like this classic question. And he said, the AI is trained. I mean, if people want to guess, I can, if you want to try and guess, like some characteristics of the different things that it has to look for. Anyone? What's the difference, wedding and a birthday?
Candles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. If there are candles, that's one.
Color of the cake.
Maybe the color of the dress is actually one
Yeah.
that he listed. If there's like a white dress, if there are candles, those are like distinguishing factors that they've trained the AI in photos to recognize, which I think so interesting, because it's really just breaking down this task that we already do. Like, how do you know that it's a birthday? You look at all of the cues in the photo. I don't know. That's just so neat.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like related to that. There's like semantic detection and like text and speech. Like, how do you tell a network that someone's being sarcastic? What about your voice or what about this text says sarcasm? Like stuff like that.
What about it does say sarcasm?
Well, I would think in speech it's definitely a little easier because I'm sure there's just like tonal stuff that gets you there. But in text, it's like, you know, people will have to put like /s on Reddit to make sure that everyone knows that sarcasm is sarcasm. So it's clearly not something that like we have necessarily managed to nail down, let alone a network.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I know we're talking about naturally adversarial things, but I'm curious, like, how much should I be worried about like an Acme kind of cartoon thing where someone paints a wall and my car just drives straight into the wall, where it looks like it's the sky and the horizon, and my car like thinks it's a road and smashes into the wall?
Yeah. So
yikes. That's
well, I mean, this was like, I was really trying to be humorous with the like cartoon aspect of like
a car with no one in it.
Really taking it seriously, and then it came out very dark. So
I mean, because most of us don't drive like autonomous cars currently, like not super worried. But it's definitely something that, you know, even not necessarily dealing with someone deliberately painting a wall, but like what happens when your car encounters those like once in a lifetime situations that there isn't any training data for, like what do you do? And so I think I would imagine that you'd start to see more of that as we start to see more autonomous cars. I don't really know, you know, how you deal with that necessarily, other than making sure that like on a, you know, Google Maps, Google Street View level, you maybe have a car going around and like checking out like, is there something here that would be adversarial to a car? We should fix that. But like, whose job is that? Is it the car company? Is it like the same as like repairing your roads and things like that? So is it the state? So yeah, it's definitely something that I think we're gonna have to think about more as self-driving cars become more and more of a thing. Because I know my MLTA, because I'm in a machine learning class right now, was telling me that on a self-driving car test, there was like one incident where, you know, they covered one of the cameras on the car and the car like accelerated like super fast. So like if your, you know, car gets covered in like mud because you're driving somewhere and it covers a camera, are you gonna go slam into a wall now? That seems bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does seem bad.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, that's something that like we have to think about in our job, right? Like whether you can trust the data coming from a source as well, right? And that's like, you know, what's the level of trust? But it's really interesting to think about something with an application where, you know, there's a lot of people's lives at stake. I've been so surprised, and I guess it makes sense for financial reasons, that like autonomous cars was the first thing to show up, and not like airplanes where like you're like they have runways, they've got, you know, trains, you know, like much more defined, like kind of constrained problems.
Yeah.
And I get it, because all of us don't want to really sit there and drive, and maybe that's the big commercial motivation. But
yeah,
it from a technical solution, I would not have said let's start with autonomous cars. That's the easiest place to bite off like this very complex, you know, problem.
Yeah, that's filled with unpredictable human behavior, as opposed to like the sky, which is unpredictable but not as human.
Right.
Wise.
Yeah.
Interesting. Also, there's just fewer of them to deal with.
I'm sure there has to be some like financial economic reason for there's.
I mean, you can sell so many more.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, pilots are not the most expensive part of airplane operations, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
Glad we are at that point in the chat.
So what about you, Sarafina? What did you want to talk about this week?
Well, I can talk about supernova stuff or pseudo supernova stuff.
I know what I want you to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want me to talk about?
You applied to be an astronaut.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That happened this week. Oh my God. Yes, I did.
How did that go?
That was awesome.
And what was the application like? Did you have to do like the shuttle run? How does this work?
Yeah, I had to like play a video game where I pretended to be an astronaut and see how long I lasted. No, just kidding. Yeah. So full disclosure, anyone can apply as long as you have a master's degree in a STEM field. So I think some people think it's like this pie in the sky type thing. Anyone can apply. So part of, let's see, I started the application at the beginning of March, but I didn't get very far. So I like put it off, and then I was like, oh no, it's the end of March and now the deadline's tomorrow. So it's mainly just uploading your resume, and then you have to like write a pseudo essay-ish type thing about various training that you've done that is supposed to help you be an astronaut. So if you've done scuba, like how does that help you? Or like I wrote about backpacking for one of my things of like, I like going in the wilderness and pretending like I'm gonna die, and like, does that help? So like that's one of the things. And then they put you through these 3 assessments. I honestly like blacked out for the first one. I have no idea what it was. The second one was a timed essay, and the question, I think I'm allowed to say, I would imagine, I don't know. Anyway, the second, I'm going to say it anyway. The essay question was discuss the pros and cons of being like doing public service. So like public service requires sacrifice. So discuss the pros and cons. And my answer was basically like, you get to like advance some of the most amazing parts about like humanity and humankind. Like what could be more awesome than that? I don't care what the sacrifice is, but I mean, you know, it was a little bit more diplomatic than that. And then the last assessment was, that was also, it sucked. I thought it was going to be like 20 questions of what is your work environment, where they give you 2 answers and they're like, which one is more represents you? But it ended up being like 100 or something. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was long. And by the end, I was like, these are all the same. I don't understand the difference. And I was just like kind of clicking through. So it was, by the end, I was like, wow, this was actually like kind of challenging to do. So that was basically it. And then I highly doubt that anything's going to happen out of my application for this cycle, but I think for the cycle in general, the next step is interviews or something.
I like that you said for this cycle. Like,
yeah, no, I'm
going to apply again. Nice.
Yeah, no, and I think like that's kind of my goal, is I wanted to get my application in the cycle just to see what it was like, and start thinking about it. And I now have an idea of the various things that I want to pursue and certifications I want to get and things I want to learn before the next cycle. So my hope is, you know, over the next couple cycles, I'll start to get enough skills to where I can actually be competitive.
That's cool.
Yeah, we'll see. I submitted my application. I was super excited. And then I woke up the next morning and my boyfriend was like, I dreamt that you died in a rocket. And I was like, okay, well,
oh no,
sorry. No, but yeah, I'm excited. It's obviously really, it's been my dream since I was a little kid. It's a really exciting thing. So yeah. I also
applied, but I was gonna say that last section where they were asking like what your work environment was, I found myself answering, I think, differently because of the current environment, right? Like there's a lot of questions like, how do you deal with stress? how do you deal with prolonged stress? How do you deal with like isolation?
Totally.
And I'm like, well, I've experienced a lot more of these kinds of things at this moment. And I'm very curious, had I answered those questions 3 months ago, if I would have had I think I would have had a very different set of answers potentially. Like it is interesting. It's actually been a really good experience purely from a like understanding who you are, right? Because ultimately, like, I kind of think of this as like a little bit of it's like a dating process, right? Where you're trying to figure out, are you a good astronaut also? Like, would you want to fit in? Would you want to be part of that environment? Because I know all of us are like, hypothetically, I want to be an astronaut. But as you're confronted with the reality of what that is, you may also say like, I thought I wanted to be this, but now that I know what it really involves, maybe it's not so much, and vice versa, right? NASA's like, we want to make sure that you also really want to be here and that you're the right fit and like what, skills, personality traits, whatever fit in well with our environment. And so it was really enlightening, I think, just more for me than anybody else than for NASA, just filling out those questions and being like, well, okay, how do I deal with, like, well, I'm not dealing great with all this prolonged stress right now. Yes, I thought I'd be better.
Yeah, and I think
kind of good.
And aside for that last section, I don't know if you found this to be true, but I started analyzing the grammar of like each question because
sure.
Like they would give these responses where one was passive and one was active voice. It was like, I do this versus like other people, or I do it as well as other people. And I was like, I guess I should be more active. I don't know. So it's like the questions that I was answering at the beginning were very different. I think I treated them very differently than the questions I was answering at the very end. And there was this sense of like, can you normalize everybody's application against when they took it in March and like what stage the pandemic was in? Because I think everybody has a different reaction.
Yeah, I wonder.
I also suspect there is a psychology to that duration, that there is some, at least, strategy in like, if you do these questions long enough, you end up becoming more and more either straightforward or blunt, or you just really going with your gut versus at first where you're weighing each one and you're like, okay, am I more that, am I more this? And then by the end, you might just be like, I'm this, I'm that, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's like interviews, right? Where the first half hour or whatever, psychologically you're in a mind space, and then you start, opening up and being a lot more.
After that, yeah, I wonder about that. I had a professor in college who had a master's degree in assessment. That was his thing. And
wow, that's interesting.
Really interesting, because like my dad was a teacher and he would talk to me about like how to take tests. I always was a good test taker, but like, reading the things that we've all learned having been in academia for as long as some of us have been, right? How to take tests written by people who don't know how to write tests. It's like, well, there are 4 answers in this multiple choice, but 2 of them are ridiculous. So it's really a 50-50 shot if I don't know the answer. Like you can start to figure things out. Obviously, those multiple choice tests get lesser and lesser as you move on, but it's like just the idea that assessment, people aren't just answering questions. You're like involved with this process. And when it comes to stuff like these long tests, there's definitely psychology involved. Like at some point, they really do want to like wear you down, because decision fatigue is real, and like those mental gymnastics take energy.
It reminded me a lot of a personality quiz, but the only personality quiz I've ever cared about is the Sorting Hat on Pottermore. And that was that's the only ever time I've been that stressed out about like, what is my personality? Except I didn't get an answer at the end. I was like, well, shit. I'm starting that this weekend. I'm gonna reread, I think. I think it's time.
I've never read them.
What?
Yeah.
Jordan.
Oh no.
I won't shame you because that's not who we are, but they're great.
Now you have so much time.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And also if you don't want to like read, if you read all day for work or for school and then you're like, I just want to relax, the audiobooks are incredible. I can't
do audiobooks.
One by Jim Day.
I also cannot do audiobooks. I really struggle.
Yeah, my attention span is not.
He does all the voices though. He does different voices for different characters. He won an award for like the 6th book, I think. And they did some like, he's created thousands of voices for this. It's fascinating, just from a perspective.
I have a hard time I'm such a visual learner that I have a very hard time like comprehending and analyzing information that I hear audibly.
Even like with voices, like it'll pass through my brain, and then like 5 minutes later, I'll be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What just happened?
It's a good
Like
time
I print
for the
out
books,
like my
though.
papers, like my
Good
academic
escapism.
papers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Escapism? What do you mean?
Like, I feel like it's a good time for reading. Like, it's a good time to like withdraw
Yeah.
into a different experience than the reality. It's especially helpful, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My cohort's trying to start a book club, and they were like, what should we read? And so we Googled like book club, like books, and the first results were like pandemic books. And I was like, no.
Yeah, no.
No.
I can give you some recommendations. I'm in a book club right now and I'm having a great time. I've read more books in the last 2 weeks than I think I've read in like a year. It's been great.
Same, yeah.
I highly recommend Packing for Mars. If you haven't read it,
it's
by
really
Mary Roach, it's like a classic
Ooh.
and easy to read. It's a sciencey book, so you'll feel like you're doing something valuable, I think. But like, it's also like a SciComm kind of journey, which is really fun. And I was thinking about it while Sarafina was talking, because it's like there's so much psychology. One of the first chapters is about the Japanese astronaut candidates at the time that Mary was writing the book, and she went and watched them eat and then clean up after eating. And then they take all of the trays of food and they put them and take photos of how they were placed by the astronauts and or astronaut candidates rather, and like what they ate, what they didn't eat. Did they clean up before? Did they clean up after? For some reason, this astronaut candidate hid her chicken skin underneath her plate so she wouldn't like look at it. Why would she do that? And all of it is like a point of data for analysis. It's cool.
Oh.
It's a cool book.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I learned a lot.
Wow.
Anyway, highly recommend. Bobak, what about, speaking of space and astronauts and stuff, the Starship failure this week? You said
there was one this morning, early this morning, I guess.
Can you tell people what it is for people that don't know?
Sure. Oh yeah, sorry, great. For those of you familiar with SpaceX's current Falcon series, which is what we're going to launch crew on, there was also the announcement yesterday that the first one has the NASA worm logo back on the side of the rocket, which made me very happy.
I saw that. I love it. I'm
a worm logo through and through. My love of NASA is like if you guys are familiar, it's the very, like the N with the curves, and it's just like a nice NASA, looks like it's from the future.
But also the past.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's both. I mean, it's my childhood, right? It was like on every shelf when I was a kid growing up. So the Falcon 9 is their current series of SpaceX rockets. The next generation, which they'd like to do for the trips around the moon and potentially to Mars, are the Starship vehicles. They had their first one, a hopper vehicle that they did early last year, I think. And they were successful. It was a scale version of the eventual full-size one. They basically were able to do a little hop. And now they're trying to build the full-size versions, at least their tanks. And tanks are one of the critical issues. You really have to be able to pack a lot of fuel and oxidizer in there into ideally as dense a space as possible, because the weight of your tank is, right, it depends on how much you can store in the tank. If you can store more in the same size tank, right, you're lowering the overall weight of your vehicle, because the tank structure doesn't have to be as big. So they were doing cryogenic loading, which is the frozen essentially, or liquid oxygen part of that thing. And the last two have failed. This was number 3 that now has failed, I guess, in that way. There were some that were intentional testing, meaning they were just trying to stress the system. My understanding is this was not a stress case. They were going to this with the idea they were going to load it with a cryogenic fuel, and then they were going to do, if that worked, they were going to actually try to do the hop test in the next week or so. And then this morning, right, there was a lot of video footage of it sort of crumpling as it failed the structure. So I have not seen a lot about what the failure mode is, like what's causing it exactly to do that. I was hoping to read a little bit more, but I haven't seen them post very much about those failures. But it is also amazing, right? Like, from a experiential standpoint, it's not often that you are in the place that you can build that many prototypes and keep sort of like iterating on it and redesigning it and practicing within. So kudos to SpaceX, honestly, for being in that environment and like sticking with it. They are also in the progress of building the 4th serial number of these. So that's still continuing, and they'll probably do some more testing, but they'll probably, I'm guessing, will go through the failure of number 3 and figure out what went wrong before they start pressurizing number 4 and seeing how it does. But yeah, it's really cool. Then, and you know, for the most part, they're not hiding it behind closed doors or anything, which is really neat to see. I really like that a lot, because I think that's the best way for all of us to learn from those kind of areas, because you know, nobody gets that chances in space. We're talking about a few episodes ago, the Ranger missions, which was JPL's first missions to the moon, and we were able to fail enough times and still manage to keep JPL in business and alive today. But like, we're no longer in the early days of the space program where people are like very tolerant of failure. So it's cool to see SpaceX still be really exploratory and like trying these things.
Yeah, I feel like failure is one of those things that people, I mean, I'm afraid of failure. I think a lot of people are afraid of failure, but like,
Absolutely.
It's that culture of like, it's okay to fail feels so nice. It's just like, oh, well, it makes it so much easier to try things. I've had the luck of working in at least one place where it was like, just try stuff, see what happens. And it was so much more creative and so much more fun and so much just better, just a better working environment. Because you didn't have like that big failure hanging over you.
I think
Well,
that's my
this is the
favorite
place to
thing about
fail.
grad school. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think like in grad school, you're basically told, I mean, the way that I approach it is I'm not learning if I'm not failing. Like I have to, there's no way I know how to do something that I've never learned before. So the whole point is to just keep learning and hopefully surround yourself with people who are willing to help you learn. Like that happened to me yesterday. My advisor asked me to do something and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about and I don't know how to learn this. And I asked someone who knew it, and then I learned, and now I know how to do it. And it's like that. It's not an era of forgiveness, but it's like an environment that just cultivates learning. Like that's the whole point. So I really like that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I had a project that I was on for 3 years as an undergrad that failed for the first 2, and that was pretty much how I knew that I wanted to go to grad school, because it was, you know, I was lucky to be in a lab that like also supported me through that and was like totally encouraging of just like trying whatever that was outside of the box once we realized that the initial plan wasn't going to work. And I'm in a lab like that now, which is also really nice. But like, I remember applying to grad school and they'd be like, why do you think you want to do a PhD? And I was like, well, I spent 2 years doing failed experiments and still wanted to do them. So like,
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Like my grad school experience was in something much less practical, and it was still like, write this thing, you know, and even in the more creative or more like, I have a degree in communication. So it was like a master's degree in communication. So it was more like, write these things, try these things. And it's like, I've never written a press release before. And they're like, well, here's some press releases, go try and write one for yourself and see if you fail at it. So I agree. I think grad school was really, it was nice to be able to just be around failure all the time. Because if everybody's failing all the time, but we're all learning stuff, like
exactly,
kind of the best.
I think it's also really important to remember, like, it's a good time to fail, right? Like, I mean, this failure, great. There's nobody on top of the rocket. Best time to you, right? You can't afford that failure necessarily when it comes to people's lives. This is the moment to fail, right? Grad school is a great example of, this is an opportunity essentially, right? To fail often, learn, grow, right? There'll be a point where, you know, hopefully you're an astronaut or whatever, right? You obviously don't want to fail in that moment, but now might as well, right? Like it's very, you know, very little consequence essentially, right? And maybe it's part of that, hopefully encouraged as part of the environment. So like, it's a good thing to keep in mind. And as you know, as you experience life, like try to pull in like, oh, here's a good place for me to make some mistakes and grow, and, you know, but in 2 months, I can't afford a mistake, right?
Yeah.
No, my program has us do 16 weeks in the hospital as like PhD students, not as MDs, and you get to like do rotations in different specialties and whatnot. And so it's a great way of being like, here's where you can ask your stupid questions, but also like that thing that you're making, like screw it up in lab, not here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty real. Well, speaking of that, if anybody has any questions for any of us in the chat about anything that we're working on or about anything else, just let us know. In the meantime, I just wanted to ask how everybody's doing. Are you socially distancing, which I guess they've also said we should be calling physical distancing, because socially we should still be interacting, but physically we should be further apart. So are you physical distancing well? Have we adjusted at this point? I think personally, I was already working from home, so this was a slighter adjustment. It was more like, don't go out in the evenings. But I don't know. What about you, Jordan?
I live alone, so I'm good. There's no one here. It's just me.
But how do you feel about it? Like, are you doing okay? Like,
It's not, I was worried about it. I guess I usually call myself an extroverted introvert. So I enjoy social interaction to a point, and then at that point I need to go back and recharge by myself. But I do kind of need that social interaction. My cohort has actually been doing, like, we call it co-video conferencing, because COVID, we're cool.
Nice.
Yeah, we post basically a Zoom link in our Slack in the morning, and you can hop on and hop off like whenever you want. So it's nice to like be working with other people, even though you're not in the same room as them. And then of course you end up having the like office chats that you would normally have if you were in lab, where somebody just brings up a topic and you end up like chatting about it for a while. So yeah, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it was going to be. The big thing that's like making me antsy is that I do Olympic weightlifting and CrossFit, which I can't do in my studio apartment. So getting a little bit antsy without the barbell, but otherwise it's been good.
Yeah, exercise is tough. That's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people, figuring out a new exercise regimen, especially considering all of the like benefits of exercise outside of the physical, just like the mental benefits and turning your brain off for a minute to do other stuff.
Yeah, I've been doing more running lately because I live right off of the Esplanade.
It's been so nice running.
Well, it's been nice to run, but like people in Boston don't necessarily get the whole social distancing thing on the Esplanade. So there's like a ton of people out there most days, and I'm like, y'all need to like.
Yeah, that's tough.
So I try to go early before it gets crowded. Yeah.
That is one of my favorite runs, though. By the way, like I went to MIT, and like that. That loop is just some of the nicest. Like there's nothing like that in most places. So I'm very jealous. Yeah.
Emily Calandrelli's in the chat. Hi, Em. The best. Also, she says she calls working out during quarantine times eye-swolation. So she's keeping the dad jokes.
Nice.
It's great.
Nice.
Into that. I've just been isolating myself also from exercise, which has been really nice.
Yeah.
To just do nothing.
Trace, I got a question for you though. Like you work from home. How do you how do you differentiate between work and home? Like what tips maybe can the rest of us?
That's tough.
Yeah, just like what's one pro tip?
A good pro tip is to put pants on. That's a really big pro tip. I think people forget that you don't dress up for other people. You do in part, but you also dress up for yourself. Like the same reason that you shower, even if you live by yourself, like you clean yourself and you have routines that you need to get into. And part of that, I think, is putting on clothes. Even if those clothes are, even if you wear the same shirt and pants every day because you only just sit around the house in them and you feel like that's fine. But have different pants that you wear when you sleep versus when you wear for the day. They don't have to be jeans. I know that like people on Twitter, some people, I think it was Shannon Strone was tweeting. I've never said her name out loud, actually. But
yeah, I was curious how you said. I've also never said her name out loud.
But that she was tweeting about wearing jeans, and I thought that was really funny, and how people are like get upset that she wears jeans when she works from home. But that's one. Another thing is now, and this is more. I got really excited and lucky when I moved to LA that we have a 2-bedroom apartment now for the first time in like 5-6 years, and so I can close the door. And like when I'm done with work, I leave this room, and work doesn't happen out there. I don't work from my bed. I don't work from my kitchen. I'm very lucky to not have to do that. When I used to have a 1-bedroom apartment, I would work from like the same place all the time. That helps a lot too. Just to have like a physical barrier between non-work and work, whether it's putting on clothes or finding a specific spot in your house. I think those are really valuable. That's my pro tip.
Thanks. I appreciate it. No, it's awesome.
How are you doing, Sarafina? Are you like enjoying not going into like you can? How do you observe? Can you like dial in and observe from remote telescope stuff if you need to? Like I know that that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's a good question. You can normally. So there's a remote observing room at Berkeley where you just walk in and you can observe at Keck or at Lick, which is where I have time. But we're not allowed to go to campus. So they're trying to set it up where you're observing from home, but now some of the telescopes have shut down. So like Keck is down. So it's very much up in the air in terms of observing, and most people aren't getting their data right now. I am still they still have the supercomputer up at the lab, so I'm still able to like play with my data and do stuff with that in terms of analyzing stuff. I was able to like make some strides in research this week, which was exciting because it was the first time I think I was able actually to be productive at work since this all started. Like really the first couple of weeks I just read and I didn't do anything else. So it's been an adjustment, but I feel like now I have a little bit of normalcy with work. But we'll see. I mean, it's like really, I just got off a call with my advisor, like my academic advisor, not my research advisor, about like 10 minutes before this call. And she was like, there are days where things are great, and then there are days when things are not great. And it's just, you take it in stride. And I think everybody's enduring this together. So that makes it a little bit easier to have to tell people like, sorry, I was too anxious to be able to sit down and read your paper. Because I think there is sort of this community understanding of a traumatic response that everybody's enduring right now. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. I saw Simone Garish tweeted that like, it's okay to not be productive right now. Don't feel like you have to be. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like it took me actually 5 days to make a video that shouldn't have taken that long, just because I couldn't keep focused. Not because I was like, oh, the news. It was just like, I don't know. There's something in the air right now with keeping mental resources focused on doing something that in the grand scheme of things feels less important than it did 3 months ago, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird to normalize this time and saying like, we shouldn't like be productive or don't be productive. Like there's something that none of us have ever encountered, and the entire world is completely different right now than it ever was, and at least in our lifetimes. And that's okay to not know how to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. All right, well, we're at 4 o'clock, so we've got a 5-minute lightning round. I'm gonna ask everybody one question and you have to answer it really quick.
Oh,
We've never really done this before, but I'm excited. Bobak, how many days has it been since you showered?
0 days. I showered today.
Oh, congratulations. Nice. That's great. Everybody else, go.
You knew this was coming.
Jordan, what about you? 1?
Also this morning.
I showered yesterday. You can maybe tell my hair is sometimes a little weird. Okay, round 2. Jordan, if you could turn into an animal right now, which animal would you turn into and why?
A cat, but only because I'm slowly breaking on my resolve to not adopt a pet, and I really want a cat.
Ooh. I've heard there's a lot of adoptions that have shut down because they're worried about staffing, but there's always opportunities for fostering and stuff. I mean,
well, the main thing that's kept me from doing it is the fact that most of the Boston shelters are now empty because everyone adopted a pet when this all went down.
Yeah, there's like a pet boom.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a pet fee for my apartment, so they're really saving me from myself.
Okay. Okay, Sarafina, what animal would you turn into and why?
A dog, because I
Oh.
love dogs. And I want to talk to Comet.
What about you, Bobak?
I think like right now is like a bird. I just want to be isolated, but like just see everything and
Yeah.
fly and just kind of like
A good
explore.
response.
I really miss being outside a lot and just kind of exploring.
A bird does sound really nice. I normally would say something like a cat or like a cheetah.
Sure.
But like now it's like, oh, or just an animal that's outside. That would be
Yeah.
nice.
Pretty much outside animal.
Me, but outside.
Yeah. Cool. Well, one last thing that we like to do is tell people where they can find us. So why don't we kind of go around in a circle? Sarafina, why don't you start and tell people, where they can find you and plug anything that you want to plug. I know that you're thinking about doing something similar to this, so maybe send people there if you want.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at StarStrickenSF, and I will be doing a drunk science hour plus tomorrow with Imogene. I don't know how to say her last name, but she's amazing. She's a conservation biologist, and I'm super excited to talk to her and also drink whiskey and talk about science. So join that tomorrow on my YouTube at 6 o'clock PST.
Nice.
I really
What
need to
about you,
order
Jordan?
more wine. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at Jordan B. Harrod, and on YouTube, it's Jordan Harrod.
Got it. Bobak?
I'm tweets out loud on Instagram and Twitter, but like my plugs the previous weeks, NASA, if you look up NASA JPL Education, there's lots of fun activities and stuff for you to do. I actually really enjoyed Trace's video last week of science experiments that you can do at home. Can you tell the difference between hot and cold water? It's awesome. So I also will plug Trace's video. It's really good.
Hey,
Check it out.
Bob.
Just things to stay at home and keep yourself entertained. I highly recommend. There's a lot of stuff out there. So check it out.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Emily in the chat has been doing live stuff like that every day too. So
Emily
Yes,
is
yeah.
killing it.
I've been really enjoying watching those. And then, could you hear the difference between the waters, Bobak?
I could not, but my girlfriend could. So
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those where I obviously did okay. I don't want to spoil it too much, but we had a little quiz section where I did okay. I could have done better. Well, and then with that, this is my channel. So obviously, if you're watching, you can subscribe right here on YouTube. Thank you to the people who have donated to Feeding America. We had, it looks like 4 donations from Nicholas, from an anonymous person, from Crystal, and from Holly. So thanks, guys. Actually, it looks like almost $80, $70 to Feeding America. So really
That's awesome.
Not only did we get to
Thank you,
hang out
guys.
and see faces, we helped the world be a little bit better. So thanks for that. Guys, thanks for chatting. This was really fun.
This was fun.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep drinking wine now.
I am also.
I'm gonna finish editing a video
Cheers,
now.
everybody.
right,
Cheers.
Cheers to you at home. Keep your hands clean.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, please.